At DragonCon this past year, we chatted with Trevor Valle. He's a paleontologist, and the conversation ranged from getting kids involved to STEM to being your own person to Jurassic Park to 5 million-year-old turtle bones. It's a fascinating conversation that I hope you enjoy. So your job is kind of unique. What is it you do exactly?
So I'm what's called a either field paleontologist or a mitigation paleontologist.
The mitigation part fascinates me. What does that mean? Because I know what it means from a financial point of view, but when you put it in the paleontology world, what does that mean?
Yeah, that gets wild. So I'm based out of Los Angeles, and California and a number of other states have laws. In this case, it's called NEQA, which is the, I always forget it, Natural, or CEQA is Cultural Enforcement, I forget, and it's early, sorry. CEQA and NEQA cover natural and artifacts that are found underground in the state, specifically when they were being found on other people's property.
Okay, and this is organic. So if it's not architectural, so it's not archaeological. It's
cultural. The cultural aspect covers archaeological.
Okay.
The natural aspect covers paleo. So, for example, my entire job is I am contracted through large environmental consulting firms that do pre-surveys of construction sites. If they find anything, it's documented, and then we figure how much of a fossiliferous site it is equals how much live, like all the time excavation is going on, paleo monitoring is occurring. So if it is a highly sensitive area, somebody like me will be standing next to 20-ton machines as they scoop earth and move and bulldoze and all of that, monitoring every scoop of dirt in case they hit a fossil. When they hit a fossil, I put my hands up and I shut down construction.
Now you say fossil, I'm going to paraphrase and say fossil-sensitive area.
Yes.
You used a bigger word for it. How do they know when it's going to be a fossil-rich area?
So we have records. So, for example, in Los Angeles has very detailed records of areas that fossils were found in. Anything from early construction around the La Brea tar pits, like asphalt seeps, where the art museum is, where the new subway is. That's a fun one. And the Natural History Museum also has records. In addition to that, there are complex geologic surveys that have been done since, right around Los Angeles being founded. So we have detailed geologic records of the different layers, and those correspond with different fossils that are found in those layers. So if you're digging in the Santa Clarita area near the Saugus Formation, for example, you'll have a higher chance to find Ice Age mammals and things like that. So we would classify that as a sensitive area. And someone like me, say it's a landfill being expanded or a new housing tract, I would be there watching as much dirt getting moved as I can.
Does someone like you, is there someone like you in every major construction area? Like, does Miami have one? New York? Or just LA?
Not just LA. LA, Arizona. I've done work in LA, Arizona, Montana. Montana gets weird because there are mineral rights under people's homes and private things and all that. But there's also government, USGS, Bureau of Land Management, National Park Service, Forest Service, things like that. Most states have some sort of protections, whether or not they're as detailed as Los Angeles. I wish all states would do what we do.
It seems cool, because it seems like if there were a large, not even large, I'll call it an improvement to anything that would, and how far, I guess recap for a second, how far down are you digging?
It depends on the formation. Sometimes we find stuff on the surface. So I did a land survey out in the geographical center of Nevada, in what's called Monitor Valley, and we found scattered remains of fossils on the surface. So that gets written up that there's surface collection possible, so monitoring will begin at that level and deeper. Sometimes in, say, downtown Los Angeles, where I was supervising the excavation for an underground parking structure for an apartment building, we didn't monitor the first 20 feet because all of that is fill-in of a young enough age that we didn't have to worry about it.
Nothing's there.
Yeah, when they hit 20 feet, I start showing up. When they hit 45 feet, part of a fossil whale, 400 shark teeth, and a coral reef.
Wow.
Yeah.
A coral reef.
Los Angeles was underwater, about 1,200 feet underwater at the time period that they were digging in.
Wow.
So yeah, whenever you're digging up fossils, you're looking back in time.
That is so cool.
It's kind of fun, man.
So did you ever read Calvin and Hobbes as a kid?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
You remember that the classic strip where Calvin finds a stick in the backyard?
Yep.
And you may not have seen this, but Calvin says, "Look, Mom, I found a dinosaur bone." Every dude and lady of a certain age has seen this.
Yeah.
And they think that. You probably have thought it too, you just haven't told me. So, and that's okay. So when you were a kid, did you want to be a paleontologist?
No, not at all. Not at all. I want to fly the space shuttle.
Wow.
Yeah, no, all of my dreams and everything from April 12th, 1981 on, because that was the first launch of Columbia, STS-1, has been about space. I've always wanted to do space. Didn't really work out for me for a number of different circumstances, so I've been side-loading into other things ever since, so I went from that to biology, and then I started working in an aquarium, and then a natural history museum found me while I was doing education and live animal stuff there. The Dinosaur Institute said, "Hey, do you want to clean this triceratops skull live and have people talk to you?" I'm like, "Sure, I know bones, I can explain all of that." And then a year later, they asked me to be the assistant lab supervisor of the La Brea tar pits.
That's cool.
And then it just snowballed from there. And now for the last, that was 2008. So yeah, 14 years, yeah. 14 years. Yeah, kind of nuts.
That's cool. So you didn't study to be a paleontologist?
No, not at all.
Okay.
And I actually came into paleontology a weird way. Most paleontologists come in via geology, because you have to study the formations they're in. You have to know, like, the Waweep or the, anything from Hells Creek, Montana, things like that, the Kaparowitz formations, just different layers in the geologic record where fossils may be found. I came in it from biology. So my geology is pretty good now because it had to be.
Yeah.
But I'm the kind of specialist that when a bone is found, or for example, or somebody brings one to me, I can look at it and at least get herbivore, carnivore, or what, like if it's like limb bone or chest or postcranial, things like that, or like the belly of a turtle. Yeah, I'm coming from an osteology background, a bone studying background. So it's easier for me to figure out what bone it is, what animal it belonged to, and how that fit into the food web, because I'm also a predator-prey specialist. And yeah, it's kind of rad, to be fair.
That's really cool. I mean, as a kid, if I were a kid, hearing what you do sounds amazing.
Yeah, oh yeah, and it's not hard. Because the first thing you need to do, the first thing you need to learn, is how to recognize the organic among the inorganic.
Okay, so is it a bone?
Yeah.
Or is it not a bone?
Right.
Okay.
So, like, you're walking around going, rock, hey, that rock looks weird. And you pick it up and you start to look at it, and sometimes you see the smooth surfaces, the articular surfaces, where the two bones are rubbing together in a joint.
And it wears it down.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just, it's how the joints function. Then that's super easy, but then there are like chunks that look like other chunks of rocks around, so unlike most sciences, we do a very specific test to figure out if it's bone or not. We lick it.
You lick it?
We lick it.
And bone tastes unlike certain things.
Bone sticks to your tongue.
Bone sticks to your tongue?
Because bone is full of these microstructures. Because bones are porous.
They are, yeah, like a bird.
So when they're mineralized, that microstructure, that porosity is also mineralized. So when you stick to the tongue, capillary action pulls the moisture from your tongue into the bone and it sticks. Rocks don't stick. So you're like rock, up bone, and then you start expanding. You find the bone, then you start expanding your search area. Once you get used to that, like I've done training examples, a weekend in like the Mojave Desert for museums and such like that, and I have people finding bones 2 days in.
and they lick them, and it
Yep.
sticks to their tongue.
And they're like, hey, we have a bone. It's like, cool. Here's a GPS. Mark the waypoint. Then we'll check the maps, see if it's been discovered before, because it's a national park area or state park area, so we can't collect without a permit. But that doesn't mean we can't go around and find them and mark them and then come with a permit later and then take them to the museum.
That is fascinating.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Doesn't pay well, though.
So your path to paleontology was very different than what I thought it would be.
Oh, way different.
So let's say I'm a upper elementary school, middle school kid who likes history, who likes living things, and may want to dig into some paleontology or at least some sort of museum studies like you did, or the path that you went.
Right.
What would I, as a 10 to 13-year-old youth, want to do or look into?
Well, first and foremost, you have to like getting dirty.
Okay, that's not an issue.
Right. Second, start talking to the different departments in your local natural history museum. If you want to study rocks, talk to people in the geology department. If you want to do dinosaur bones, talk to them in the paleontology department. If they have a living animal section and you want to be a biologist or a zoologist, you can do that or go to your local zoo. Start talking to them, asking them, hey, how do we do this? Are there any volunteer opportunities? Can I come on a dig? Can you help fund a dig? Anything like that. When I was working at the La Brea tar pits, I had the honor to, when I was made the lab supervisor, I had an entire volunteer corps of preparators. Fossil preparators, fossil cleaners, and they would assemble broken bones and stuff like that. My minimum requirements for volunteering at the Page Museum that you had to be 16 and breathing, and we would train you. We would train you how to...
3 years.
There you go. We would train you how to sort microfossils and then clean bones and then assemble them. And after you did about 80 to 100 hours, you would actually go out into the park and begin excavating with our excavation team. I cannot tell you how many of those people have gone on 2 careers in paleontology, including 2 of them who have both achieved their PhD and are discovering new species now.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is fascinating.
Volunteering at museums, if it's available, is the best way to do it because you are getting hands-on training and experience.
Because a lot of the parents and some of the kids who might be listening, the bugger with volunteer and kids is that it's that 16 cap.
Yeah.
You've got to be 16. And what I've tried to impress upon students of that age is that I realize 16 sounds far off, but even if you're under 16, what you could do is you could maybe read a book about it.
Oh, absolutely.
Start a podcast about paleontology. Do a YouTube series.
Find an education, like a summer camp or something. A lot of museums do that, like Adventures in Nature and things, like finding that, and they'll take you on trips. You don't have to be, some places you have to be 16 to volunteer in the building, but that doesn't mean you can't go to a natural history event where you go into a fossiliferous canyon and find a bunch of sand dollars or marine invertebrates and stuff like that. As far as I know, every natural history museum that I know of does that, from the American in New York to the Field Museum.
Really?
Yeah, all over the place.
We were there last week, actually, the American in New York.
It is
5 blocks large.
Yeah,
huge.
It is one of the most impressive natural history museums on the planet, and one of the few federal depositories which can actually have Bureau of Land Management dinosaurs and stuff like that. It's a different class of natural history museum where they can store, study, and have access to Geologic Service, National Park Service, those kinds of fossils.
So I know he'll have a question in a second, but you're based out of Los Angeles.
Yes.
Is there ever, for lack of a better term, a paleontology-emergency where a dig happening in, I don't know, in Montana, Texas, or somewhere else, or even overseas, would they call you and say, hey, we need all hands on deck because this is crazy?
Absolutely. So in Northern California, a farmer in Castroville, California, the artichoke capital of the world, was tilling his field and hit a big chunk of bone. The local community college came. They were all archaeologists. They started doing their thing.
They licked it.
No, archaeos tend not to lick because, licking a human bone, that would just be weird.
That would be disgusting. Yes.
Right. But they suddenly figured out that they had some kind of large ice age mammal, so they called the tar pits, totally freaking out. They're like, I think we have like a mammoth or something here. I'm like, cool. I got nothing to do this weekend. I'll head up. Then I was made director of paleontology for the Castroville Mammoth site. It was awesome. But my job through all these different firms, I get called all the time. I'm relaxing at home, and they're like, what are you doing tomorrow? Can you go to Inglewood? We found something. I'm like, okay, cool. Museum-wide, they schedule digs. And if they find something big enough, the call goes out, like, how fast can you get to Montana? Or in the case of when I was filming Mammoth Unearthed, I was contacted by National Geographic to go to Siberia to study a mammoth that had been found on the Liakovsky Islands. Yeah. And that ended up into a 8-week filmed documentary excursion. That was insane.
Wow.
Yeah, it happens. We have paleo-emergencies all the time.
That's awesome. That sounds like a dietary issue, doesn't it?
I know, right?
Emergency. That's weird and awesome. So you were studying something this past week. What were you studying, brother?
Okay, well, first I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
How do you use the classification system in your everyday work?
Which classification system? Taxonomic or geologic? Or
Taxonomic.
That gets weird. Because being an Ice Age specialist, we find a lot of animals that have analogs these days. Like mammoths are proboscideans. They're related to elephants. Cats are felids and everything. But there does get a point where we're trying to classify something, and we have it down to the genus, but we're not sure on the species. And that's when it gets fun, because we just start writing acronyms. We call it SPA. So if we find a cat, it could be Felis SPA, SP period, which is an acronym for we don't know what the species is and we're trying to figure it out. It's pretty cool. Classification, though, taxonomy gets a little weird, because what we thought some things were related to, it turns out they're related to other things. For example, the closest living relatives to birds right now are alligators, crocodilians, because they're both from the Archosaur family, and everything else between them is dead and extinct.
That's not what I would have said.
So when we're doing cladistics, when we're finding morphological or physical similarities between these two animals, it tends to throw everything up in the air. And yeah, the fun thing about classifying animals is that you can be completely sure that this is this type of animal, and you have it down to genus and species. And we were talking about this in a panel yesterday, that then a paper can come out and go, hey, I studied all of the ones you said it was part of, and all the ones that I think it's part of, and it turns out that everything you thought was in column A is in column B, and then names change and everything. It's weird. Classification is a very malleable, very changeable thing that we have to deal with. And in everyday life, I like looking around and seeing, it's like, oh, that's Felis domesticus. That is a house cat. It just comes. And the thing I like to say, Latin is, like a lot of people say Latin is a dead language. It's not. You use it every day when you're talking about dinosaurs. Hey, that's a Tyrannosaurus rex. Tyrannosaurus is the genus, Rex is the species. You're speaking Latin or Greek.
Yeah, your cousin is taking Latin.
Rad. Very cool.
And I initially, as a parent and educator, I said, why would you take Latin if no one speaks it? But in the science community, you speak it, don't
all
you?
the time. All the time. It's like every genus and species is Greek or Latin.
Any other points that you would kind of impress upon younger folks? Again, there's maybe ages 8 through 13, 8 through 14, that maybe want to study science, but it's not cool, or they don't have the time, or whatever. What would you say to those folks?
Okay. That's a quick little story. And for all of you out there that are unsure of what you want to do because of maybe how you look, or what music you listen to, or anything like that, I would do sneak tours of the tar pits. I would take my lab coat off. I'd be wearing a t-shirt, an overshirt, shorts, Converse. At the time, I had long neon yellow hair and a long neon yellow beard, like a goatee, and I'm covered in tattoos. I would come out and like, hey, everybody, I work here. What do you think I do? They're like, I don't know, you clean the floors, you dust, maybe you're a janitor. I'm like, cool, what do you think I do outside the museum? Oh, you're a tattoo artist, you're in a band, you ride a motorcycle. Then I ask them one specific question. What does a scientist look like? Oh, they have a lab coat and glasses and gloves, they mix chemicals, they clean things, they study microscopes, I'm like, cool. I do work here at the museum. Everybody come with me, and in the La Brea tar pits, we call it the fishbowl. It is a visible lab. You can look through glass and see paleontologists and paleontologist volunteers.
It's a working lab.
It's an absolute working lab, surrounded by 60 feet of mostly soundproof glass. So you are getting a huge view into how a paleo lab works. That's when I tell them, this is my office, and this is the lab I run. And immediately hands go up, like a lot of the smart kids are going, oh, I want to talk about Smilodon, I want to talk about saber-toothed cats, mammoths, da-da-da-da. But I'm actually talking to the kid in the back, wearing the metal shirt, with like the emo haircut, whose face is down, and then he looks up and he sees me with neon hair and beard, tattoos and all that, and he hears the words, I run this lab, I'm a scientist. It's those kids I'm trying to get to.
That's cool.
It doesn't matter what you look like, what music tastes you have, you know, if you're heavy, if you're thin, if you want tattoos, you don't. If you want a mohawk and be a biologist, get a mohawk and be a biologist. But what I can most recommend is read. Read anything you can. If you like dinosaurs, pick up books like Dinosauria or like the Fossil Record, different things like that. If you like biology, go to zoos, study animals, but start reading, because the less you read now, the more out of sync you'll be with the science because of the way it's advancing.
And that's read anything.
Yeah. And read differing authors. Read public access papers. Learn what the terms mean. Learn what the scientific terms are. Things like that. Just voraciously absorb information and keep it with you, because at some point you'd be like, wait, I read that in a paper somewhere. And then you remember it and you're like, this can help me. So yeah, reading, getting experience. If you can find a volunteer gig, do it. It's up to you. And honestly, I know so many people that would never in their right mind think about being a paleontologist until they had that one person or saw that one movie like Jurassic Park in 1993 or anything like that, and they're like, wow, I want to do that. Now, I will say, unless you are in a very high-level museum position, a curator, collections manager, something like that, the pay's not too great. So you really have to do it. If you love dinosaurs, you love getting dirty, you love experiencing, and if you want to literally look back in time as you excavate a tyrannosaur from Hell Creek, Montana, yeah, be a paleontologist.
And you touched on Jurassic Park, because I was going to ask you that, but that was actually a great encapsulation of what I was going to ask.
Yeah, no, Jurassic Park, the original Jurassic Park, influenced so many paleontologies, even colleagues of mine today. A great example is Lee Hall. He is the collections manager at the Bozeman Museum. He's discovered a juvenile T-Rex. He's done all this amazing stuff. He studies sauropod footprints and all that. He's amazing. He saw Jurassic Park and went, you know what? I want to do that.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, he wanted to be Dr. Grant, brushing bones away in the desert and finding stuff, and then realized that, wait, velociraptors aren't in Montana. And but there are so many sources of inspiration, regardless of what you want to do. Even to the point, like, you like fast cars? Go for being a race car driver.
Yeah.
If you want to fly the space shuttle, join the Air Force.
Be realistic.
Yeah. Follow what you want to do. And it is not, do never be embarrassed about what you want to do. If you want to write stories, write stories. If you want to do research, do research. If you want to walk on the moon, go for it. Yeah. It's just, don't ever let your imagination limit you.